the week high. Guess I must be having fun. The less we say about it, the better. Make it up as we go along. With my feet on the ground, head in the sky. It's okay, I know nothing's wrong. Nothing. Oh.
Hi there, welcome to the Pear Deck and Edpuzzle remote learning webinar, where we'll be doing some app smashing today. I am not going to share my screen because I can't do two things, or I'm not going to show my face because I can't do two things at once, which is read the chat and talk. So apologies there. I wanted to introduce Alex as well. Alex, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Hello, everybody. Super excited to be here today and talk about both Edpuzzle and Pear Deck, which I think are two tools born out of the same idea that students learn best when they are the ones doing the thinking, when they are being actively engaged, and when they have interactive opportunities. So excited to be here and talk about the tools and hopefully help you figure out how to navigate these tough times we're facing in teaching right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. I mentioned this already, but I will not be keeping an eye on the chat. Alex and I will be moderating the webinar, but please do. I see that everyone's taking full advantage of the webinar itself. Feel free, introduce yourself, and as you have questions along the way. We have a few different folks on our team who are going in and answering questions along the way. So feel free just to post those questions there, and then we'll be sure to leave some extra time for Q&A at the end as well. So
Nick, can I just hop in for 1 second?
Yeah.
Just also for people who are in the chat, if you switch that blue bar that says to and make sure it's to all panelists and attendees, that way we can all see each other's messages and can talk about questions and topics that come up together. So if you want to share with everybody, make sure that's set to all panelists and attendees.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So as far as a quick agenda, we're going to learn how to build a Pear Deck lesson incorporating Edpuzzle. I think that's kind of why we're here. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do that real briefly at the beginning of the webinar. We'll transition into talking about, at a high level, just some of the best practices for remote learning and online learning in this new environment, the new situation that we're all in, that we're all learning together. Then we'll talk about how Pear Deck and Edpuzzle can integrate together, and we'll have you sign in to join the webinar or the lesson, the Pear Deck lesson, and then do some Edpuzzle fun after that. And then finally, we're going to set everybody out on your way to get started building your first lesson, with the overall goal that hopefully Pear Deck and Edpuzzle is something that you can integrate into your digital classroom for the coming weeks and months. So we'll start on Pear Deck's side. For those of you who don't know, Pear Deck, we're on a mission to help teachers engage every learner, every student, every day, and really every student. So not just like your front row students who are the first to speak up and shout out the answer, but also the students that you don't hear from in your classroom, whether that's live in class or remotely. So to give every single student a voice, and then along the way for the teacher, the beauty of that is that you're getting deeper insights into those students' learning. So you're getting that data behind those interactions. And so that sounds great, but what does that mean? I'm going to show you right now. And so we're going to build out a lesson live. And so I'm in probably what's a fairly familiar environment for you all, which is Google Slides. That's just because that's a tool that I'm most comfortable with. If you're more of a PowerPoint user, by all means, use PowerPoint. I'm going to be featuring Google Slides, but just know that everything that I'm doing here, we have that complement in PowerPoint with the add-in. And so within Google Slides, 3 easy steps. First, we're going to open up the Pear Deck add-on itself. And again, in PowerPoint, that is an add-in. And voila, if you blinked, you missed it, but that's step 1. And step 2, as we transition into step 2, which is adding interactive slides, I'm going to use our template library here. I only want to feature our template library because that's the absolute easiest place to get started, because we've already done all the work for you. At this point, we have hundreds of templates to choose from whether it's for like the beginning of class, the end of class, during the lesson, maybe like a check for understanding or an exit ticket at the end, different learning development types. So critical thinking, social emotional learning, and now even down to the subject area itself. But let's just say that I wanted to start off with a warm-up to start. And so I'll browse through the different templates that Pear Deck has provided, and I can learn a little bit more about what that question is going to look like. And then I'm just going to select this one just as an example for us to use today together. And keep that word template in mind, because this isn't necessarily like content or curriculum, because you can always edit these prompts to make them your own. So I was going to ask, what are your favorite apps to App Smash? I think there's a space in there. So I can always copy and edit that to make it my own. Let's do a little social emotional. I think we could probably all use a stress check here. I see a lot of teachers that are, trying to figure out how they're going to use those same SEL practices outside of the classroom in our virtual classroom remotely. Pear Deck is a great way for you to be able to check in with your students regardless of where they are. So I think we could probably all use a little stress checks. We'll just drop that in there. And then I'm going to take these slides and I'm going to move it down a little bit later on into our lesson. And then finally today, Alex and I are going to end with an exit ticket for everyone. And we're just going to ask in 1 minute, write the most important thing from today's lesson. What's the number one takeaway you have from today's lesson? I love this prompt because it doesn't matter what grade level or what subject area you're teaching. This is just a way for your students to pause at the end of the lesson and reflect on what you did. And so finally, the third and final step, if we go back to our 3 steps here, is to simply present lesson with Pear Deck. So you saw it beginning to end, everything you need to do to create a Pear Deck lesson. You just open up that add-on, drop formative assessment, checks for understanding into an existing lesson, and present with Pear Deck. So don't feel like you have to recreate the wheel and start from scratch. Take a lesson or activity that you're already planning on using with your students maybe later this week, and drop in a few of those formative assessments, and you've done it. You've built your first Pear Deck. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Alex to talk a little bit about Edpuzzle, and then we will get to putting these 2 things together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. And it's so great to see how easy it is to add those interactive Pear Deck slides. For those of you who don't know, Edpuzzle is a tool that lets you choose any video from YouTube. It lets you embed that video with your own assessment questions, and then lets you track and monitor your students' progress as they watch. It's a really easy to use tool, and we think it's a really powerful way for you to improve your use of video in the classroom. So now I'd love to talk about why I think Edpuzzle will be your new best friend. And I think it will be your best friend, not just during this time when you're teaching remotely, but hopefully when you get back into class, you can continue using videos. And I know when I was a 5th grade teacher myself, I made Edpuzzle a staple in my classroom. And that's for a couple of reasons. One thing is that when you use video, you let students learn at their own pace. So I remember when I was teaching 5th grade math, we were in a geometry unit, and I would be asking my students to draw out something like a square on the screen. And I have some students who would take their time and really carefully draw a square on their paper. And I would have other students who would move really, really quickly. And for me as a teacher, that was always a catch-22. Do I move with my faster students and risk losing out the ones who are taking their time? Or do I go a little bit slower, but risk boring the students who've already completed that piece of the lesson? And with a video, you really are able to solve that dilemma. You can let students pause, you can let students rewatch, and so you can really tailor the support that each student is getting to be successful. Now, the problem with video is sometimes it's hard to tell if your students have actually watched it. And that could be a problem if you are hoping to come into class the next day and have a discussion. So what makes Edpuzzle so great is you have analytics on who watched your video, how long they spent on it, how many times they watched it, what questions they got right or wrong. And so you're really empowered with data, and you're able to hold students accountable to what they've done and what they know. The last thing I love about, and this goes for both Pear Deck and Edpuzzle, is that you can get 100% student participation. So when you're a teacher, you can call on maybe 1 or 2 students who have their hands up. Or if you do something like a call and response, you can get a general sense of what's happening in the room. But when you use Edpuzzle or when you use Pear Deck, you get to see every student respond to every question. And that just gives you a wealth of data that you can use as a teacher to then react in the moment, decide what your class needs, and make a really informed decision about how to do the best job supporting your students. And so we hope that Edpuzzle will be your best friend as you go through this remote teaching time, but we also hope it's something you can build into your daily routine when you're back in the classroom with your students. And so Nick, I'd love to pass it back over to you now to share a little bit more.
Yeah, so what we're actually going to do at this point is we're going to get to some of the app smashing, and then we're going to have you join in. So what Alex and I wanted to do was we were going to embed an activity, a lesson within Edpuzzle into the Pear Deck, and so which is the main point of us all getting together today. So we're going to do 2 different lessons: what is matter, and then also ancient Egypt. And Alex, if you want to walk us through on the Edpuzzle side on what that's going to look like on your all's end, then I'll take over for showing how to embed that into Pear Deck.
Awesome. So we decided to show, or I decided to show you how Nick could get started with Edpuzzle, just to show you how easy it is to find a video and edit the video and have it ready to embed in Pear Deck and assign to your students. So Nick is on Edpuzzle's homepage right now, and all he needs to do to find a video is search in that search bar. So he's searching for fractions on a number line right now. And in these search results, notice he has a whole bunch of results to pick from, and he can pick whichever one looks best. And this video is coming with some pre-built-in questions that other teachers have used. However, it's pretty likely that Nick is going to want to edit this video a little bit so that it better fits his class's needs. So he can just come and click edit, and he can choose to either cut out sections of the video, he can crop the beginning of or
fractions
the end,
on a number line.
He can also
Now you're
crop
cropped to
the middle.
So the numerator for this
He
fraction
can also,
is
if
5.
he wants to, add his own voice and replace part of the video audio with his own voice. So if you're a teacher who wants to have students hearing your voice, or if you want to explain things a little bit differently, this is a really powerful way to do it. And lastly, one of our most important features is being able to add questions. So all Nick will need to do is go to the point in the video where he wants a question and type in multiple choice, an open-ended question, or just send his students a note. So here he's going to do a true or false question. He could add more options if he wanted. He selects which answer is correct or incorrect, and then he can go ahead and embed that video directly into the,
and there we have it.
That question
This
directly into
dash.
the video. So then once Nick has his video exactly as he wants it, he just goes to his My Content tab, sees that video that he just edited, he can click on that, and comes down on the right side to where it says Assign. Now Nick has already created a class. If you don't have one, you can go ahead and create one, but Nick will just pick that remote learning class. He'll go ahead and click Assign, and now that video is assigned to his class, ready to go. So the last thing he'll need to do is get ready to share it with Pear Deck. So he can just come down, click Share Assignment, and he's going to be working with this embed code. You can think when we're embedding an Edpuzzle, we'll use this embed code, and he's just going to go through and highlight the URL in there. So he's going to carefully highlight just the URL of the video, which will let him stick it directly into his Pear Deck slides. So Nick, with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you and let you show them the rest of the work of assembling the Pear Deck presentation.
So I'll admit I'm a beginner to Edpuzzle. So I mean, the fact that that's that easy for me to navigate and have Alex walk me through that, it's pretty awesome. Alex and I jumped in and we added a few. I mentioned we were going to do the what is matter and also ancient Egypt.
Nick, can you make sure you unmute your audio?
Oh, I think can you guys hear me all right? Can you hear me in the chat? Okay, it sounds like they can hear me. Alex might just be muted. So our class here, we have our 2 lessons. And if I wanted to take my ancient Egypt, just like we did before, we're going to share this assignment, which is going to give me that embed code. Now here is probably the most important thing to take away from today's webinar, is that when I copy this code from ancient Egypt, Edpuzzle is going to try to give you some tools to embed this into a website. Now, to embed this into Pear Deck, you actually don't need the iframe width, height, full screen, things like that. You actually just need that URL. So Alex mentioned that, but you just need that, anything that comes between those two quotes. So the next time that you go to pull an activity or pull a lesson from Edpuzzle, just remember that. So that's the #1 thing to remember. So I went ahead and pre-pulled this. So I'm going to copy and paste this right from Edpuzzle. And then we're actually going to turn this into a website. So we're going to turn this into a web slide. And within Pear Deck, what that means is that you're going to send students directly to a website without having to open up another tab, have them click on a link, post it to your LMS, whatever it is. You're just going to direct them right to that website. And so you can see that Pear Deck actually gives you a little preview of what that video is going to look like, so that you know that you're sending students to the correct page. And then on the bottom of the screen, we're going to add a little footer that lets you know that, hey, this is now an interactive Pear Deck slide, and you can rest assured that this will be sent to your students. Let's do the same one for ancient Egypt. Again, everything inside of the quotation marks. So we just want that URL here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that. Again, we're turning this into a website. And so I will just copy and paste that link directly into Pear Deck. And just to verify that it works, we just make sure that we see it. And that's exactly where we wanted everybody to go. So you just saw it. That's all that it takes to embed Edpuzzle into a Pear Deck lesson or activity. Keep in mind, you're going to use this as an assignment, and you're going to copy and paste that embed code. So you're going to share that as an assignment so your students have access to it. And then you're just going to pull that highlighted text. And so if we look at our agenda here, we've done step #1, and now we're gonna use Pear Deck to engage and make this interactive so you can see what it looks and feels like from a student's perspective. So the third and final step is to simply present lesson with Pear Deck. We've opened the Pear Deck add-on, we've added interactive slides, we've added an Edpuzzle lesson, and then we're gonna present lesson with Pear Deck. So now what I want everyone to do is to go to joinpd.com, and we're gonna give you these instructions up in front of us. So don't worry, but joinpd.com. And then we're going to give you a code to join in, a 5-digit code. And this is customized to our session, to today's session. So joinpd.com, and you can do this on another tab. You can do this in another window. You can actually pull it up in another device as well. Joinpd.com. And then you'll notice that the code is MWIZJ, MWIZJ. And very, very quickly, we've already gotten 10 students, 11 students joined in. So for some of you, I'm assuming this is not your first time using Pear Deck, and probably not your first time using Edpuzzle either. But for those of you who are already in, you'll notice you don't have to download anything. You don't have to set anything up. It's just a single sign-on with Google or Microsoft, whichever tool you decide to launch. So your students don't have to download anything or create a goofy username and password. You're just going to synchronously sign right in. So if you haven't been able to join us yet, it's just joinpd.com. And then our 5-digit code is MWIZJ. And as everyone's joining in, I want to go ahead and share with you that I had a secret view that was pulled up that actually automatically launched. And I hid this from you. I was sneaky and I hid this from you, but we call it our teacher dashboard. And so you can open up your teacher dashboard. This automatically launches for you when you launch the session. So I wanted to show you what this is, because we're going to toggle back and forth between this as we go. But we tell you what the teacher dashboard is. It's a superpower for you as a teacher. It gives you insights into the classroom that your students might not necessarily see. We tell you to keep that off the screen so your students don't see those responses, and you can also open that up in a separate device. So you can control a lesson from your phone or tablet. So I just want to share that with you, and we'll toggle back and forth between that. Now you can skip the sign-in completely if you wanted to just invite your class via Google Classroom, or copy the link to share in your LMS or on your website, or email that out to students. So you can always copy that as well. Awesome. And just a note, the join code is always up here at the top right-hand corner. So as long as you remember joinpd.com, anyone can join us at MWIZJ, and we'll make sure that our folks post that link to join in. So if you missed that at the beginning, you can join in at any point along the way. I won't talk through each of these. I intentionally had this up so that you could read through it as we went through. I think if I were to call out one, and only because I'm the biggest offender of this, which is just when you're sharing your screen, to be cognizant of the fact that you're sharing your screen. You know, that includes like closing any unnecessary tabs, bookmarks, windows, things like that, because that's just only going to distract you and your students. So how I led off the webinar saying that I have to close the chat because I can't focus on two things at once. That's kind of my version of eliminating those distractions. Alex, any best practices that you guys are hearing on your end?
I think I really agree with most of these. I also think the biggest advice I've been giving to teachers is not to stress so much about the tools and using video or sharing your screen. I think a lot of people feel a lot of stress about teaching in a way that they haven't done that before. And I think what we've just been saying is to relax, to have fun with it, and to be okay with there being mistakes. It's okay if your phone rings during a class. It's okay if your dog jumps up in your lap. I've actually found when those have happened in some videos I've made that those are some of students' favorite parts of the lessons. And it's one of the things they remember and makes it more of a human interaction that they're lacking right now. So I think the biggest thing is just have fun with the opportunities of remote learning and don't let these tools be an added stress. It's okay for you to be human with your students.
Well, we're certainly all learning together. There's no doubt about that, learning together as we go. There's no doubt about that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's kick this off and see how we can integrate Pear Deck, Edpuzzle into Pear Deck. So we're going to get started with our warm-up that we built together, right? So we took a Pear Deck template and we asked on top, what are your favorite apps to app smash? And I should have added a question mark there. That's poor grammar of me. And so we're just going to ask that prompt. And so imagine that this is, you know, a warm up that you ask on at the beginning of the week or at the beginning of each day or lesson. And I'm going to go ahead and show these responses. So I went ahead and showed these responses. So now you can see these in front of the room. And so now live in real time, we got up to actually there's 98 of us who are joined in. We've got 98 of us on our lesson together. We've asked a question and I can see as the teacher that 44 students have responded. And so one of the things that I had mentioned before is that Pear Deck gives students a voice, a safe voice without having to worry about them raising their hand or shouting out the answer. Seeing a lot of Edpuzzle and Pear Deck love. So happy to see that we can app smash those two together. Now, although it's always anonymous to the students and to the classroom, if I pull up my dashboard here as the teacher, then everything that was pulled from you all just simply signing in, which is your first and last name and email, which is pulled from your school's domain and rostering that's already set up for you. So you can see all of those are pulled there. We do a quick little temperature check, climate check at the beginning just to see how your students are, how they're doing, how they're feeling. So you get a little social emotional learning there. But you notice that I see not only how my students are responding, but actually which students are and which students aren't, or which students have questions and how I can help. And I'm getting all that data, all of that feedback in real time. So kudos to you all. We're at 72 responses here. So 72 out of 100 responses. We're always looking for that 100% student engagement, like Alex mentioned, but we're well on our way here. I'll certainly take it at 7:30 on a Thursday evening. How about our quick stress check here? Let's see how we're all doing. Just a quick little stress check. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Got ahead of myself. All right. I'm going to go ahead and practice a little classroom management because there's quite a few of us on here and I want to make sure I have your attention. So I'm going to go ahead and lock screens here so that all of our lines that we're dragging are going to stop. When you do that in the classroom, all the heads are going to pop up and you get all eyes and ears on you. So I just simply locked screens down here, lock screens. So now you can see we've got a wide range of emotions that are happening right now, but the beauty of Pear Deck always being anonymous is that your students that are struggling, aren't able to manage their emotions, you can do a quick check-in right then with them on the fly, have that intervention, you know, maybe after class, or just check in to see how everything's going. A couple quick questions that Alex and I were just worried about or concerned about asking to see how kind of your classrooms were set up, what you all are doing, how things are looking, but also gives you the chance to see some different types of questions in Pear Deck, just to see what our classrooms are looking like. Are they more synchronous, asynchronous, maybe a hybrid of both? And it looks like for the most part, we're a hybrid of both. One thing I would always mention here is that if you are using video conferencing and you are recording your calls, if you do record the calls, you turn any synchronous learning opportunity into an asynchronous opportunity if you record it and share it with your students afterwards. So I'd always recommend doing that. On Pear Deck's end, Edpuzzle is very asynchronous. It's very much on your own time whenever you would like. Within Pear Deck, this is a live session that we're running, so we're all signed in here together. If you go down to the three little dots at the bottom of your screen here, if you see the three little dots on my screen, at any point you can turn on student pace mode. So that's essentially flipping your classroom at that point. And when you turn on student pace mode and flip your classroom, then you'll give students a link to where you can post that to your LMS, you email that out, add that to your website, and then students can access that lesson at any point right from there. So although Pear Deck right now we're using it for synchronous, it can certainly be used for asynchronous learning as well. And then finally, was just curious to see what types of device, if any, that your students did have access to at home. So let's go ahead and look at these here. We've got about 100 of us in on the session. So very, very quickly, you can see we're making a mess of things here. And as before, I'm gonna go ahead and lock screens before things get too out of control. And if I wanted to take these responses, I chose to overlay these. If I wanted to break these out into a grid, I could look at those individual worksheets. I kind of like that view to be able to look at all those in one single view. Again, we have 69 out of 102 responses, which is really, really pretty impressive, especially considering we're all remote and out there in different places in the country and the world. So kind of to bring things back to where we started here, Alex had showed you how to pick a few lessons that you might want to assign in Edpuzzle. And just remember, when you pull that embed code, then we're just going to take everything that happens within the quotation. So the actual URL, so the HTTPS all the way through the end of the quotation mark. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to model what we just talked about, which is we're going to flip our classroom. And so for the next two slides, I'll give you a little preview of what's going to happen next. For the next two slides, we're going to turn you on your own to go through an Edpuzzle. And I'd recommend probably like picking one or the other, but you can switch between the two if you want. And we'll spend, Alex, what do you think, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes on going through and seeing what it would look like to participate in the lessons?
Yeah, I think we'll give people about 2 minutes. And one thing I just want to add before we let you go see the Edpuzzles is, because some of you have teacher accounts and we didn't want there to be any issues with that, what you're seeing is just the public view of the Edpuzzle video. So when your students go on, they will not be able to skip through the video. They'll have to watch the entire thing. They won't be able to skip any of the questions. But just to make it easier, as we're sharing it with you right now, you'll be able to skip through parts of the video, preview the questions, skip any of the questions, and just see what an Edpuzzle video looks like when you're interacting with it. So there are 2 videos to choose from. We'll be back in about 2 minutes to keep moving with this, but please enjoy checking out Edpuzzle and put any questions that come up in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them all.
All right, guys, I'm going to flip my classroom. I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to create an asynchronous learning environment. I'm going to turn on student pace mode. And if you look on the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, so take a look at the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, you all can now select whichever lesson you want to take a look at, what is matter, and Agent Egypt. So one thing I will note on Pear Deck's end, and so a lot of times there's a challenge, with flipping your classroom. When you flip the classroom, sometimes you give up some of that control, and it's kind of on students' hands until either the assignment is due or the deadline ends, whatever it is. But if you notice, I'm actually going to pull up my teacher dashboard into the screen so you can see that. As the teacher, although I flipped my classroom, although I've turned this into student paste mode, I can actually in real time see like the 48 students, now 50 that decided to do the lesson on matter, and then the 32 students that chose to do ancient Egypt. And then you can see that feedback, that data come in live in real time, both in Pear Deck and Edpuzzle. So as they're completing this in Edpuzzle, you can be in your classroom, in your class, your content, seeing as those are completed, seeing how students are responded. And then within Pear Deck, you can actually see even where they are. So I can see like our overachievers who have moved on and are moving ahead, which is totally fine. Not calling you out at all. So although you are flipping your classroom, you can monitor that progress along the way. And just today, I saw multiple tweets come in around teachers that were watching as students are going through and completing the lesson, so they can see which students have finished their Edpuzzle videos, which students haven't even begun yet, and you're getting all that live as you go.
Yeah, and I've Nick, just to add on, I've heard a couple people ask if you can see the Edpuzzle results as they come in, and the answer is yes. You can't see them on the Pear Deck dashboard, but Edpuzzle will keep track of all of those results. And so I also saw a question about, could a student just skip past an Edpuzzle if they go into student paste mode? And the answer is not really, because when you looked at your Edpuzzle results, you would be able to see that the student had not completed the entire video. So there is tracking on what the students are responding, as well as who's watched the video and who has not watched the video.
That's great. Well, guys, I know I can tell everybody's having fun working through the lessons, taking it very seriously, and I really appreciate that. But I think we'll bring us all back together here. So another one of those great classroom management tools. With all websites, not just Edpuzzle, you're able to take control back of your students without having them open up a new tab, go to this URL. Everything's just right embedded into that same environment, so they never have to leave that screen that they're on. Alex, I'll turn it over to you to share some different ways that teachers can learn more.
Awesome, thanks, Nick. So this was a brief introduction to Edpuzzle and how it can be used with Pear Deck. Obviously, there is a lot more that you can do with our platform. And so if you're interested in learning more about how to use Edpuzzle, how to become an expert at it, we have a whole set of certifications that you can do on your own time and earn the badges to become an Edpuzzle coach. And those are all available for free at go.edpuzzle.com/onlinepd. And just one other thing that I wanted to bring up. But for those of you who are just getting started with these platforms, there are a lot of ways that you can make Edpuzzle and Pear Deck work together in your classroom. We showed one right here, which was smashing an Edpuzzle into a Pear Deck. But there are also ways where you could have students complete an Edpuzzle independently and then use a Pear Deck in class the next day to lead discussions and have conversations about what they watched earlier. So don't feel like smashing the two together is the only way that they can be used. We hope that you take advantage of both of our tools to make all parts of your lesson interactive, regardless of how you want to structure that.
That's awesome. And then on our end at Pear Deck, I'm directing you to all things remote learning on our end, where we've curated a lot of resources, all of the resources that you'll need to keep your students engaged as we experience school closure. So a lot of this is going to do with student pace mode and that asynchronous learning that we talked about today. We will follow up with a lot of resources that you guys can use to help get started. So no worries there. Keep an eye out for an email from us, and we will share that info with you. Now, I wanted to stick with our plan, which was to end with a quick exit ticket. So we'll do a quick reflection at the end to see what was the most important thing we learned from today's lesson. And to put 1 minute on the clock, I just hold down the lock screen for just a second, and then I can select a pre-canned time. And so now all of my students know that we've got about 50 seconds to respond to the prompt. Right, and I'll just go ahead and show these up in front of the room. All right, some fantastic responses there, guys. Thank you for taking a second to share what you learned today. The last piece here, I'll do a quick check-in on our agenda. I think we've done pretty well. We've gotten through the first three things that we did want to accomplish today, as far as learning how to integrate Edpuzzle into Pear Deck and App Smash and use the two tools together. Best practices for remote learning. Actually showing what that looks like from the student's perspective. And now the last thing to do is to actually make your first activity that hopefully you can use in class tomorrow with your kids. So I wanted to leave us right where we started, which was making that lesson interactive. And so I hyperlinked this Make Your Lesson Interactive with Pear Deck. I hyperlinked this because this is going to take you right where we started today. It's going to take you right to those three steps of opening up the add-on, adding interactive slides, copying and pasting that embeddable link from Edpuzzle into Pear Deck, and then finally presenting your lesson with Pear Deck from there. So I wanted to make sure that you all were at least on the right track of having those three steps to get started. So if you missed it, go ahead on your student device and just click Make Your Lesson Interactive with the power of Pear Deck, which will bring you to your three steps of getting started. And then just again, to reiterate, where you're going to want to copy and paste the Edpuzzle embeddable link is going to be a website slide. And when you click website slide, that's where you can copy and paste any activity, any lesson, any assignment that you have right here. So here's our Edpuzzle link from before.
Awesome. And then Nick, I'm just going to add one last thing, but obviously we want to support all of you teachers during this time when you are away from your students. So Edpuzzle right now is offering free premium trials to any school that wants to take advantage of it while you're away from your students. I put this up earlier in the chat, but I will just put it back in the chat again. So if you click this link, you'll be able to get free premium access for your school to Edpuzzle. And I will link one other, which is just if you're looking for more information on how to get started with Edpuzzle, we have a whole playlist of videos that you can watch on your own time. So we hope you can get started. And if you need anything, we are always here to support you. And as Pear Deck and Edpuzzle, make learning for your students more interactive, whether that's at home or in a classroom.
Thanks, Alex. I will just wrap up by saying that everything we did today, we've recorded, and we will share that out and follow up with you. So if you have a teacher that you think might be interested in doing a little app smashing, you can just go ahead and share that right with them. So we will end it there. I also don't want to send you off with any questions that go unanswered. So please feel free, utilize the chat. We will stick around and help you guys along the way, but we really, really appreciate your time. Again, as we are all in this together, all learning together to navigate this new remote learning environment. So we very, very much appreciate you.